All right, everybody. Nate Hagerty again here, CEO of Tax Pro Marketer and Advisor Pro Marketer. I'm super excited about today's guest. If you don't know who he is, probably been hiding under a rock in the accounting industry in particular. A lot of my tax listeners may not be as aware of what's happening on the accounting side. And I'm really excited for them to hear a little bit from this guest. I've got Joe Woodard, CEO of Woodard, and the aptly named Woodard. But in particular, you probably know him as the proprietor of Scaling New Heights, which has established an awesome reputation in the industry. It's probably one of the top 3 events in the accounting and tax world, next to Engage. And what's the other big one that you guys always? It's the QuickBooks one, right?
Well, there's QuickBooks Connect and XeroCon. You're the ones that are put on by the general ledger.
Right.
But for those that are general ledger agnostic, there aren't that many options in the US.
That's what's amazing, is you've carved out this niche of success-oriented accountants who come to you thousands at a time to learn from you and your team, and you've gathered an incredible audience. And so I want to hear a little bit about that origin story, but just backing up. So Joe has trained over 125,000 accounting and business professionals in practice development, technology trends, strategic consulting, all the sort of tech forward components of running a successful practice. He's the host of the Woodard Institute, the Woodard Alliance, again, aptly named. But what I love about what Joe does, and one of the reasons that he and I have connected over the last couple of years, I mean, I've spoken at his events. We also exhibit at Scaling New Heights. But what I like about Joe and his team is they care. They actually do care about the success of their attendees, and they're not just in it for the buck. They're not creating an audience for the sake of creating an audience. They're very service forward in how they care about their team. I've interacted with, I think 7 or 8 people on his team, and every one of them lives and breathes their vocation. And Joe, I would love to talk to you at some point about how you built your culture on your team, because I think there's some things that I want to learn from you about that based on my interactions with your team. It's a big passion point for me, just culture in an organization. I've got 19 employees. You've got, I don't know how many,
25
on the Woodard side. And they are for sure quality people. I particularly want to shout out Kathy Roth right now. She's amazing.
She's top notch.
Oh my golly. Anyway, so they do education, coaching. They've got all kinds of resources. They're a lot more Joe's organization is a lot more well-known in the non-tax side of our industry. There's a lot of tax folks that also have gotten hip to it and are coming to Scaling New Heights. But I would love to see more and more tax practitioners be a part of what they're doing over at Woodard. So you actually have an event. We scheduled this podcast not strategically as promotional for your event, but the timing is amazing because your event it's like
coming up in June. It's a couple months away. Yeah,
that's right. And
of course, it comes around every year as well, depending on when you're listening to this. It's always in June.
That's right. Exactly. So my recommendation is just put in the Googles Scaling New Heights, register, especially after you've listened to this podcast. What I love about what they've created at Woodard, when we've exhibited at lots of different events, NATP, IRS, office tools, account techs. We've been around the block at these different events. We're hitting up Engage this year. Woodard is a first-class event, and I've spoken at tons of events, smaller events, kind of guru-oriented, success-oriented events that are just a couple hundred people, and I've never seen a better-run event than
Well, thank you for that. I think for my team, my team works very hard, so thank you for that.
It's obvious. All right, so let me shut up. I would love to. So the theme of your event right now, this year at Scaling New Heights 2022, is Thrive. What does that mean for you? Like, what's your big mission in 2022 for your community? What are you waving the flag about right now?
Yeah. Okay. Well, the Thrive word was chosen very carefully. And what we're saying to the community is, especially through the COVID crisis, but beyond COVID, even before COVID, we have been, as bookkeepers and accountants, into a survival framework for so long. And it's surviving the commoditization of tax and bookkeeping, surviving the displacement of tax and bookkeeping by technology players.
Well, and also idiot clients. I mean,
Well,
I
yes,
love
and
them.
then surviving the fact that we're in this category that's equated to death, right? It's death and taxes, which means it's us in the mortuaries.
Right.
And the morticians, they do have a pretty high churn rate on their customers. But other than that, we're both suffering. That's a joke. You're suffering.
We don't get a lot of repeat business in that industry.
No, you really don't. But other than the churn rate, we're suffering from the same paradigm, which is we would avoid you and we will avoid you if we possibly can, but we can't. Therefore, we're obligated to engage you, right? And so that's also been a huge struggle. And it really comes down to the fact that the origins of the profession, if you look deep into our origins, not like way back to the monks or way back to the recording of financial transactions on papyri on the banks of the Nile, right? And those things to exist. There's some the oldest documented financial transactions on papyrus in ancient Egypt. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just the 20th century. Just look at our 20th century origins, and especially our late 19th century origins. And in this particular profession, like with the religious profession, we were called to it. I mean, some of your listeners here who are 60 years and up will actually probably remember that phrase being addressed, because it took decades for it to get fully worked out of the profession. People mentioned, I'm called into accountancy, the way you hear religious people say, I'm called into ministry.
Interesting.
And what we meant by that in the origins of the profession is, this is the difference between a called profession and a non-called profession. Here it comes. In a non-called profession, you pay me because I worked. In a called profession, you pay me so that I can work. We pay a minister so he can work. We don't pay him by the funeral, or we like a mortician. We don't pay him by the wedding,
by the hour.
Not if he's our pastor, right? We don't pay him every time he preaches a sermon. We pay him so he can work, right?
Right.
So in our DNA as a profession, we were paid.
I've never heard. Can I just pause you there?
Yeah.
I have never heard that distinction in all of my years of being in business.
Because it's now ancient history, but ancient history creates DNA. And that DNA, that mindset is there. And then what you do know, I'm sure, because it's much more recent history, is it's only been within the last couple of decades that we have even been allowed to market as a profession. CPAs were prohibited from marketing, and you as a marketer would know that, right? Which is why you're dealing with the inherited DNA of the fact that they don't know how to, because the profession is comparatively a baby in this area. So whether we're dealing with the fact that we've never had to learn how to sell, we're just like a doctor doesn't have to learn how to sell, they prescribe, right? But we've never had to learn how to sell. We've never had to learn how to market, or we haven't historically learned how to market. And then deep into the recesses of our DNA, we have inherited this mindset that I am called into accountancy. So I'm paid not because I worked, but so that I can work. So the idea that we now have inherited is, because I'm making the bills, because I'm paying my people, and because I have a comfortable lifestyle, like a minister, do I need any more? Should I take any more? Is it, and they get on to all these identity crisis issues with it. Now, I think the younger generation is starting to bleed away from this. Some of the crowd that's more like 60 and up that's listening, they'll say, hey, yeah, I know that's the way I feel sometimes, or felt sometimes. Now, but what does it mean then to thrive? It means to change all the paradigms of the history of the profession. It means to change all the paradigms of the present of the profession, and to create an entirely different paradigm. Now, I'm not going to do that in a 4-day conference. What I'm going to do is I'm going to train around the new paradigm in the conference, right? I'm going to use it as the basis by which I train. What am I going to teach to? And the difference between surviving and thriving is about 4 key elements. It's about how I price. Am I pricing to my value? It's about how am I valued? Is my valuation to my client too low? Not my valuation like I'm gonna sell my firm. Is my valuation to my client too low? A lot of people have a low valuation and they're still pricing underneath their valuation, right? So let's price correct to your value. Then let's price adjust up by adjusting up your value, right? Those are the 2 elements that have to do with price. So you're talking about something that transcends just record keeping and bookkeeping, something that transcends just tax preparation, in taxes. Those are warm spots, they're comfort zones, and they're much needed in our society. But because they are so plentiful in the space, they function almost in a utilitarian way,
Right.
like the power bill or the gas bill. And
Right.
I don't have to tell you, 1 penny change on gas and the whole world goes into an uproar, makes the full front pages. People are most sensitive with price when you've turned into a utility as a necessary evil, is how I define it. A utility. A commodity is a little bit different in the sense that it's about prevalence of work or volume in the space. Utility in the psychological sense, not the literal definition, is, do I have to do it or do I want to do it? So
interesting.
I want to subscribe to Netflix. Even my cable company that they call a utility, I want to subscribe to my cable company. I have to have my power turned on, right? So we're talking about price and we're talking about increasing value. We're going to address both of those at the show. We're talking about sales, because we've got to teach people how to sell better. We have a little bit of that at the conference. There's a lot of places where people can go that's outside of our wheelhouse. I love Sandler.
Sure.
Go to the Sandler sales training in the area near you. They're in every major market in the country, and just run the whole Sandler program, and it will revolutionize your firm. And then, of course, learn how to market, which I don't have to tell you, Nate, where they can go for that. But they need to learn how to market, which includes brand management, having a marketing plan, just
content strategy. I mean, I don't want to hijack it. We could talk about that forever, but
absolutely. Okay. So those are the 4 elements really fast: price, marketing, sales, and increasing your value through some form of value-added services. Now, there are all sorts of reasons why more of your listeners aren't doing those consistently. We can speak to that maybe, but that's what we'll be talking about at the show.
I love that. And what I love about your event is it really is entrepreneurial in focus. And as you've identified, moving people outside of that bean counter mentality, outside of that kind of classic, stodgy firm model, and actually helping them to build something that upon which they can scale, upon which they could build influence among their clients, and not just sort of the execution of a function. And that's fantastic. Okay, so we're going to get back to this stuff. Joe, I don't know how much you've talked about this with other people, but this is just maybe selfish on my part as somebody who is interested in how you have created what you've created. Would you be willing to share sort of the Woodard Events and Institute origin story, and kind of how you got into doing this? Because you might have dubbed yourself a little bit and kind of like, taking massive risks. And there's people who are listening who are tax practitioners, who are CPAs, who are accountants. Maybe they've got some dream in their mind that's outside of their practice, or within their practice.
Yeah, but how does that intersect reality, right? Well, so what I say is that you will find what you just asked me to explain at the intersection point of 3 things: who you are as a person, the higher principle you follow, and the change you want to see in the world. And so when you're—
Isn't that Frederick Buechner? Who,
actually, that is something that I compiled from multiple sources, mostly from E.M. Bounds, mixed with a little bit of Dale Carnegie. But I put the actual 3 intersection points together as the brainchild of multiple books I read.
Buechner said, find where your great passion and the world's great need kind of
intersect. So they speak to sort of the same truth. What I've learned is when you discover a truth, even if you've assembled that truth on your own, there's a vein of truth that runs underneath all of humanity. And so you'll find once you see it, you'll be like, oh my gosh, it was said over here too. It was said over there. And sometimes it was said 1,000 years ago.
Right.
And then it was said yesterday. So there's so many people that have seen the same vein of truth. But the way I describe it is the intersection point is who you are, the change you want to see in the world, and the higher principle that you follow. And if you have all 3, it takes all 3 to make that happen. You will discover at that intersection point your purpose. And that, to me, Nate, is what people are hungry for. It's systemic to the human condition to be hungry for purpose, whether you're conscious of the hunger or not. And when you're conscious of the hunger, then you will direct your hunger in the right direction, which is to discover purpose. And then you just start looking at those other 3 things. But if if you're not cognizant that
back up.
Yeah.
How'd you start this thing, man? Like,
I know, but I'm getting to this.
okay,
because they, I'm gonna land the balloon, but I'm trying to help everybody else to find their own thing too. So I'm telling you kind of what the map is, and then I'll tell you how I'll walk the map.
Shut up, Nate.
It's all good. It's all good. So when you know that that's your hunger, then you'll put your hunger in the right direction. If you don't, you start doing other more destructive things with your life, which is, maybe a topic for another day. So, so what does it mean then? How did those 3 intersection points work for me? Well, there are 2 different ways that this happened, like it happens in everybody's life. Part of what happens is what happens to you. And then the next is, what do you do with what happens to you? So my undergrad degree was in classical Greek, and therefore I really didn't have anything that was.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. I have a bachelor's degree in classical Greek. So, yeah, it's really not, but I mean, it's amazing that I could read it. It's not amazing that I wasted a 4-year education, but because I wasted a 4-year education, I'm going now to graduate school to study archaic languages. And my parents finally just went, oh, Joe, come on. If you're going to do that, you have to get a job. So I did. I went to what was called then Manpower and Associates.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so I said, I got to get a job because my parents cut me off and I want to go to graduate school. I'm trying to finish up this Greek stuff. And they put me on a 3-day filing job with a CPA firm. And then they said, we'll try to find you something permanent later. Well, that 3-day job with a CPA firm turned into a 3-month job, still under the temp agency. They just want to keep me around doing stuff. I had no idea what this firm did. I just was doing administration. And then finally he pulled me in and he said, we'd like to give you a job here as a professional in our firm. And that's when I confessed I had no idea what you people do here.
I've just been putting papers in different file holders, sir.
If somebody had a gun to my head, I could not have told you the difference between a W-4 and a W-2. I didn't know. Yeah. But he saw something in me, that capability in me, an aptitude. Right?
Smart hirer.
And then he sent me off to the University of New Orleans, where I had to drop the graduate studies in Greek, and that was grieving that little loss. And he made me go to UNO and study accounting at the graduate level. And I learned my debits and my credits, and I have.
So he really grabbed you.
He grabbed me and he redirected me, but it wasn't just him. I believe life grabbed me and redirected me. And that's part of the higher principle that I follow. But the reality is that's where, as I talk to accountants, there's so many people that say they didn't choose accounting chose them. I mean, this is a common story. Accounting does find people, right? It's crazy. So that's what happened with me. And then of course I worked in this CPA firm. It was my incubator environment. I went to UNO, studied accounting at the graduate level. So I'm trained accountant, but as a secondary career. Now, to get to the other part of the story then.
Hey, just so you know, you're in good company. I studied modern studies at Virginia. I wrote my senior thesis on Marcel Duchamp. And you know who he is?
Oh, yeah.
He's famous for putting the urinal in, so,
anyway,
here I am.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the undergrad stuff is just, it's just interesting how sometimes that doesn't connect to what you do in life. But what happened is that next, of course, there was the whole thing with the Intuit contract, and that kind of got me a little bit of a brand recognition, the personal brand. But what caused me to take all the risk and to put all the effort into creating now 13 years of Scaling New Heights and all of those things? Well, let's get back to that intersection point for a minute. Whenever I was a child of business owners. They owned a construction company. And I had to share my parents with this business, like so many kids do with their parents, who are the clients of the people listening to this podcast. And and so I'd want to watch the Bionic Man. I remember that. And I remember that my dad's phone would ring. And if his phone rang, there was no cell phones. There were no answering machines. So if the phone rang, he had to pick it up. He had to get the job sites lined up for the next day. When that phone rang, I lost my dad till the phone was put back down. Could be right in the middle of whatever we were doing. Yeah. And my dad was a great dad. It's just, I'm trying to tell you kind of where the pain was. Well, this is a little bit of who I am, right? I grew up in the child of just hearing all the stress, seeing my mother's tears, looking at my dad talking to himself with a nervous nature, trying to figure out how to do this small business thing, and how it weighed on them so heavily in order to provide for themselves and our family. And I realized that that's exactly what small business owners are doing now. They have more technology than ever. and they have more resources than ever, more information than ever, but they're still in the same place that my parents were at in the 1970s. And the what stands between the small business owner and thriving is whether or not their accountant is thriving or not.
Yeah.
Right? If the accountant is thriving, their clients will thrive. As a matter of fact, I would even say that's the ultimate test of, are you thriving?
Right.
Not how much money do you make or how many people know you or how many people follow you on social, but are your clients thriving? Okay,
Yep.
well, then you're a thriving practice, right?
Yep. Yep.
So when you look at who I am and the change I want to see in the world, you can't separate that from liberate small business owners from small business pain. Now, I could choose to do that as a consultant, and I have a 20-year long consulting practice that still operates today, one business at a time.
Yeah.
Or I could do it like I'm doing through the conference and our coach program through accountants who support an average of 25 clients a piece. And I support thousands of those. I can help tens of thousands of small businesses,
Right.
by getting accountants just to focus on that pain. Right.
Yes.
So there you go. That's how I ended up where I'm at today.
Okay. All right. So, but I want to even get to the nitty gritty. So your first year jumping into starting this event, what did that feel like? And did you just come out of the gate with this event? Like you had this consulting practice. Was it an event for your consulting clients?
Yeah, it was really just, no, not my clients. It was like, hey, you know what? Why don't all of us get together, buy us for us event, right? I'm a QuickBooks consultant supporting the mid-market. How about all of the others get together who are QuickBooks consultants who are supporting the mid-market, and let's just have a confab at the Crown Plaza off the side of the interstate. And the original name, I haven't really ever told anybody this, but I don't care. The original name of Scaling New Heights meant that we are going to scale from QuickBooks Pro to QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
So let's get everybody up to the mid-market, you know.
Yeah.
And so I expected, I don't know, 30 or 40 people to come, you know, and 275 did.
Okay. There's a real thing happening now.
There's a real thing happening. And the majority of the people that came didn't want to support the mid-market. They wanted to scale up in their life and practice. And I thought, okay, well, the market's telling me something different than I originally conceived. Let's go with what the customer wants, what my peers want. And that birthed Scaling New Heights. That's
amazing. And so that was 2007?
That was 2009.
2009. My math is, golly, I'm getting old.
I remember you do 2 of them in the first 12 months. So that's why it gets to 13. Yeah.
There we go. All right. Wow. 2009, first one. And I remember hearing about you at an Office Tools event, I think in 2014. And you guys were doing it in the Bahamas. So my question is, why aren't you in the Bahamas now? Because I would rather bring my team and I to the Bahamas than where are you guys? Orlando, which is amazing.
Yeah, where it is, Orlando's amazing.
Especially the World Center Marriott.
I will never.
The World Center Marriott is the best hotel in the world.
It is an amazing hotel, right? It's the biggest Marriott hotel in the world.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I'll never go off the shores of the US again because the attendees all came. We had one of the biggest events we've ever had.
Yeah.
The big sponsors came and spent as much money as they ever spend, but the little sponsors did not.
Yeah. Yeah.
The little sponsors realized it was going to cost them 4 times as much to stand up a booth in the Bahamas than they were paying for the booth, the sponsorship. And they said, we'll see you next year. Yeah. And what that did is create a diminished experience for everybody. There was half as many
shipping costs are a little different to the Bahamas than they are, intercontinental United States.
That's absolutely right. So, we're staying in the US.
That's all right. That's fine. I won't be that upset slightly, but it's quite okay. Orlando's nice.
At least it's warm in Orlando.
Yeah, that's true. All right. So what are the big issues that you're seeing? Like, you've been doing these events for 13 years. You speak from the stage to thousands, at your events, and you're also in small groups, small rooms. You're getting a lot of the same kinds of issues. And I reckon it's the same 4 things that you are putting in your keynote: pricing, positioning, marketing, those sort of things. But what are some of
another one I failed to mention was that most accountants, bookkeepers don't have a model that will scale. So there is a 5th one out there.
Okay. Well, talk to me about that.
Sure.
Tell me about the model that
the model that scales. The model that scales starts with standardized process. And these are not sequential, that has also automated. So you got to do both of those in concert. You have to tackle that animal in concert. So you have to find the stack of automation technologies that you want to use. Bookkeeping, you can move the lever a lot more than you can in tax. Typically, you buy the tax prep solution.
Right.
It has, if you get a really good one, it has a representation model, or you can add something like Canopy so you can get your representation model over the top. CCH just came out with a really good research module too. So you put these little pieces of tech together and you create a stack, and you automate much of what you would normally have to do manually, right? But in the bookkeeping side, it's about entry automation, and it's about client collaboration and all the streamlining of those pieces. Well, here's a mistake people make, Nate, is they say, I am going to solve this whole problem of scale through tech. Or on the inverse side, they say, let me standardize my process fully in a workflow solution, and then I'll shop for tech. Both of those are bad answers, and both of those lead to a dead end, which is why many of your listeners may have given up ever trying to crack the nut here. You've got to do them in concert, because when you pick the tech is infused with process.
Right. It's going to look different in Asana than it does in, right.
Well, yes, the container for the process looks different, but also Bill.com has a different process than Depulti, which has a different process than Mineral Tree. So whichever solutions you pick, they're infused with process, and they have different processes. And so if you build a process and then go shopping for tech that fits your process, you'll never find it.
Right.
And so, but if you build out a stack of tech and you don't simultaneously build out the process to fill in the gaps between the tech will break. So as one step, you do tech and process. Now, once that happens, you have positioned your firm to offer the holy grail of record keeping, which is real time.
Right.
Because real time is actually not hard. I mean, let me clarify something. Real time is actually really easy. Right. Ask any client if they can maintain their books real time, and they'll say, yeah, absolutely. We do it real time. We match every day.
No, it's KPIs. It's interpretable data.
But it's also accurate before you even get to KPI, right? Yeah. So real time, if the client is doing it, is easy, but it's not accurate.
Right.
Accurate, if you're doing it, accounting firm, is easy. But real time is hard, because real time is hard to scale. But when you do the standardized and automated process, you will get accurate and real time. And then we get to your KPIs. You saw where I was going. Right. Because once you have accurate and once you have real time, then and only then can you create financial KPIs you can trust. Right. And that are actionable. Yep. So when you have that, you have distinguished yourself. Even before you interpret a single line on the general ledger, you have already distinguished yourself, bookkeeper, from 80% of your peers, but it's less than 20% of bookkeepers can offer accounting real time at scale.
But it's more than, sorry, I don't mean to,
no,
you're making my brain go on this stuff too, because it's so much more than just the books and accounting, right? And that's, I think, the flag that you wave. What your clients are actually wanting isn't just clean books. They don't really, a lot of them don't even really care. I mean, they're happy to have clean books. They want clean books. They want to be able to see their P&Ls, but they want to be able to do something with that data. And so many of them are not trained to interpret a P&L in a way that gives them actionable data to make decisions in their business.
They don't know what an operating capital formula ratio is, right?
Right.
Like but they also what they need to have is the baby steps before they get to those analytics. We can analyze some of that and provide guidance to them and not write down how we got there, which is what I would recommend to your listeners. You run the ratios, you provide the guidance, and you just say, hey, like, I've taken a look at your financial statements. I think you need to do this, this, and this. Yes. And not try to train them in the first step on ratios. But let me tell you where it hurts, where it really, really hurts is cash flow.
Right.
It always hurts with cash flow. And if they have accounts receivable, it always hurts with AR.
Right.
So if you, so you can always lead with those two things, always cash flow, sometimes AR if applicable. And you can get clients to start thinking about you not as a compiler of data only, but as an interpreter of data. But you know what else I love about those two things, cash flow and AR, is they seem germane to the role for the bookkeeper. It's not like I'm going into my client and saying, hey, now I'm a financial coach. Really? When did that happen? Last night? Right. Did you read a book? No. no. But if I say, hey, you know what I've not done enough for you is project your cash flow. They're like, hey, that makes perfect sense that you should know how to do that.
Yes.
And then you find a really good tool like cashflowtool.com, which you can put a /Woodard on it, get a little better price. Cashflowtool.com/Woodard. There's the tool. Attach it to QBO, and it will tell you exactly what the cash flow is with minimal training. So yeah, these pathways aren't hard. You just have to know that they're there.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people out there, so there's different kind of audiences that you reach, right? There's the bookkeeper types who have been maybe like it's a second career, or they've been a stay-at-home mom, and they're just like they've got a penchant for doing these sort of tasks, and they're kind of like they've got like 10 clients, and they're kind of moving into a real business kind of modality. There's the CPA firms, accountancy firms that are like legit, like they've already been established, and they're trying to streamline and get better. But a lot of my listeners are in the tax world, right? So we've been in this space since 2007, and again, that's kind of the majority of our footprint.
Sure. I can speak to them with the same thing.
So I want to hear about that.
Too.
So what do you say to the tax practice? There may be the seasonal oriented tax practice, and they know they're seeing the writing on the wall, right?
Yeah.
It's not just Intuit and Block and like the TaxSlayer, the softwares out there. It's that the tax code itself is just grinding. Like if you pay the hashtag to look at, Joe, if you ever are, I know you're on Twitter, but like, do you ever look at the tax Twitter hashtag? Yeah, check out tax Twitter hashtag sometime.
Okay, yeah, I'll take a look at that.
And it is it's all kinds of gallows humor, right? Especially during tax season.
Sure.
People are exhausted, burned out. They're getting treated like crap.
Yeah, right.
By their clients.
I'll tell you why this is happening to tax particularly. I'll tell you why this relationship dynamic is happening. And the light bulb came on at a parenting seminar. The person that was the parenting expert said to me, said to all of us parents in the room, that the wrong paradigm of parenting is I live to make my child happy, and I react when my child makes me unhappy.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's the most common parental paradigm, right? So I turned to my wife and I was like, yes, that's true. And it's also true of accountants, tax preparers, and bookkeepers. So the tax preparers are in this paradigm. I live to make my client happy. I react when my client doesn't make me happy. And boy, you're right. I don't follow that hashtag. I follow others. They're definitely made unhappy, right?
Right.
Definitely they react. They react on Twitter because it's our place to vent. So, So what do you do to get out of that paradigm, that relationship?
Well, and also with tax, there's these deadlines, right? And it's the same deadline for every freaking person in the United States.
Right.
April 18th,
unless you extend, but we haven't done a really good job telling clients that if you extend, it's going to be okay.
Yeah, right? I know. It's amazing.
And one of the tweets I did see, and I loved it. It was like, this long. It was part 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
And it was, extending doesn't increase risk of audit. Extending doesn't increase risk. And it was like 7 parts.
Yeah, no, I think I saw that one. Yeah, I saw that one.
Great, right?
Yeah.
But they think, oh my gosh, I can't go past April 15th.
I've been on extension the last decade just because.
Me too. Me too. My CPA loves me because I'm like, just whatever, we'll deal with it in September, October. So because I don't care, and I know, and I also pay in good estimated taxes. I never have interest and penalties, and I don't want to deal with it before my conference either. So it's all work. My point is, the majority of people, we can't pace throughout the year like that. So the IRS could do some real help to us by communicating out that it's better on everybody. Yeah. If you work with a CPA,
or just change the flipping deadline, or
change out the deadlines a little bit, which would cause me to move my conference. So let's just stop there. But
I often think,
I'm booked up in June for the next 5 years.
There's these perverse incentives for people like you and me who serve the accounting and tax industry, where, like, personally speaking, I would love it if they would just simplify the tax code. Professionally speaking, I'm so glad that they don't. But at the same time, like, just genuinely speaking, it's so crazy. The tax code is insane. The
tax code is insane. So let me tell you, let's get to some answers here, because we've kind of defined the problem. The answer is not unlike the same answer for the bookkeepers. It's a price answer and it's a value answer, but this is the way it lays out. as this is if your listeners will hear me on this, this advice, not because I'm all wise, but because I've deployed this and seen it field tested. If they will do this, it will change their practices. As soon as the ink is dry on that tax return, all right, using it figuratively because most refile, but as soon as ink is dry on that tax return, go to your client and say that you have 3 tiers or 2 tiers, whatever it is, of tax subscription.
Yes.
In tier 1, you're going to pay me X per month, and I'm going to do your tax return, and I'm going to do a semi-annual tax update or check-in with you, not a whole planning gig, just a check-in. And I'm going to give you, if you're on a subscription, a 50% discount on notices, flat rate of $400 a notice. So it would normally be $800 a notice for whatever your price is. Say cut it in half if you're on a subscription. So that would be tier 1. And you can build out your tiers however you want to, but I'm just giving you an example. In tier 2, which is really where you want them to live.
Right.
What you would say is, I'm going to do an actual tax analysis and planning engagement with you in the middle of the month as part of the subscription. So no longer trying to sell it to them, right, in the summer when they're on vacation and they won't return your emails, because that doesn't work. It's included, use it or lose it, right? Which means you pre-sold it. So we're going to do your tax return. We're going to prepare that. I'm going to take a look at your QuickBooks or Xero, whatever it is, every quarter. You're going to give me a login. I'm going to take a peek. I'm going to look around, see how things are going. You're not going to do a big engagement. You're just going to look, right? That helps you too. And find some things that are wrong that the client needs to course correct on, and maybe refer them to a bookkeeper or your own bookkeeping department. That'll help you coming up next tax return. Helps the client too. Okay. Then I love this part. I'll handle X number of any issues that arise, notices, to levy, weird balances that come through. I'll handle anything that the IRS or any state sends you that's income tax related 4 times a year, 6 times a year, whatever it is. Put it in there and say it's part of your subscription. Now, when you do this, the client will actually send you the notice the moment they receive it. I promise they will.
Yes.
Because the reason they're not is not because they don't care. The reason they're not is because they're hoping to go away without them having to pay you, which it doesn't. Then they're delaying what they have to pay you until the intent to levy comes in.
Right.
And then they send it to you, manufacturing an emergency you don't deserve.
Right.
Right. So they'll send it to you the moment they get it. And because they know that it's included in their subscription plan, and then they'll go on about their lives and the world works like a great place. Then you can create an upgrade to the subscription if you wish, that you can do a quarterly tax analysis and planning engagement as an upgrade, and give them that lever to pull. Now,
and I love that. I love the 3 tiers.
And that's just the second one. The third one would be full on business coaching, which may not, they may not be ready for that yet. So just do 2. But I'm going to say this, and I said it on a podcast with Intuit's Pro Connect department yesterday, and I'm going to say it. And if my CPA is listening to this podcast, I hope they are, because I'm going to keep saying it until they do it. Right now, I pay my CPA about $5,000 across my whole portfolio, and I pay it like everybody else. He does the return. He sends me an invoice. I pay the invoice, except I'm a good client. I pay it. I don't quibble, and I pay it on time.
Oh, brother, I pay mine $1,500 a month.
Okay, well, yeah, but my CPA won't do that. So, but anyway, I'm glad I don't have your tax bill. But my point is, it's about $5,000 a year is what I have. And I've said to him many, many times to his face, and on multiple podcasts, I've thrown down this challenge. I would gladly pay you $700 a month if you would go with a subscription model, bundle in some of those sales tax notices so I don't have to worry about the incremental billing because I'm going to pay it anyway, and add some value for me. Give me some tax analysis in the middle of the year. I will go to $700 a month if you will just call me. Are you listening, my CPA? And do it. Create the model. I'll make you more money, and I'm not alone.
Yep.
Right?
No, I'm happy to pay that. I'm paying my tax person $1,500 a month. And I have an accountant, like a part-time CFO type, who's giving me the KPIs and, looking at things. I'm paying that person $1,500 a month.
You must have a lot more states than I do. We'll have to get into that detail. But the point is,
I don't know. Maybe I'm overpaying, but I'm happy.
Yeah. Well, that's the point, right? It's a set and forget. And now I've got somebody protecting my journey, not just with compliance, but also with tax avoidance, which, by the way, is not a bad thing. Evasion is not avoidance. So so yeah, we need to help our clients with credits. We need to help our clients with benefits that they run through their company. We need to help our clients with S corp and corporations, S elections, so that we can, and then with the right, fair, reasonable salary, right? So that they're audit proof, but they're maximizing their tax value. We need to be doing this stuff proactively. You know what
Yes.
else will happen? Once I'm on subscription and I know that every time I pick up the phone with my CPA, they're not going to turn the taximeter on.
Right.
I'm going to call them before I buy a major asset.
That's right.
We get mad at our clients because they don't call us, but we've created the paradigm that prohibits them or at least deters them from calling us. So
Yeah, we charge by the form and by the notice.
Thank you.
And
Let's change the paradigm.
yeah, no, that is a flag I've been waving for a couple of years. I didn't used to pay my accountant, $1,500. It was more like $250 a month for a while. But it was the same dynamic. I was getting kind of like an on-call sort of advisor. And I didn't feel bad about, scheduling the appointment when I needed it. And I didn't abuse it because I work with tax people, so I know the drill. But yeah, that changes the entire relationship. So
it does.
Yeah. Oh man. I think that people are getting a little bit of a flavor of the sort of things, because these are the sort of conversations you're having on stage at Scaling New Heights, but also throughout the year. So this isn't just your organization isn't just about like this one-time big event. Talk to me about the Woodard Institute. Talk to me about the Woodard Report and some of these other things that you guys are building over there.
Well, folks that listening into this podcast, there's a wide range of stuff that you can go over to woodard.com and get for free. So I'd encourage you to do that. The Woodard Report is one of those things. The Woodard Report, as you know very well, because you contribute to that, is our media arm. We publish numerous articles every single week, and we have tens of thousands of readers. So go check us out at woodard.com, click the Woodard Report. We have our own podcast, and we even have a reality TV show where at cable television quality level, we spend $125,000 per production hour detailing out the technological makeover of an actual small business by a small business advisor. It's not reality TV because it's actually real. It's a video case study done in reality TV format. Very enjoyable to watch and free to watch. And all of these things are at woodard.com, as well as one free webinar per month that you can go check out. But to get to your other thing about the coaching program, our coach program emerged because we realized that there's a big set of calendar real estate between conferences. And we were discouraged by the fact that people would come, they would feel inspired, they'd feel informed, and then they failed to act. And the missing piece was there was nobody coaching them throughout the year on the principles that they learned at Scaling New Heights and beyond. And they didn't have a plan. I mean, I don't have to tell you, your clients who will to create and adhere to your marketing plans versus those that don't, it's night and day, right? So do they have a practice plan? Do they have a growth plan? Do they have a human resource plan? And do they know how to manage a firm and steer a firm from where they are to where they want to be? Well, that's what our coaching department does. But we also have an area of our coaching department that we call the School of Advisory informally, where we prepare accountants to coach their clients in 6 disciplines of business need. So yeah, we do that 365 days a year. Well, 361 because we're busy the other 4. Scaling New Heights, yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, in the very small amounts of time we have left, left turn. Talk to me about your team leadership. Honestly, this is something that I think in our industry needs to be talked about more, because the Great Resignation, blah blah, the finding good help is a conversation that a lot of people are having within our world. I know us here personally, that's not been an issue. There's a lot of reasons why that's the case. It's not that like working at a marketing agency is a sexy thing, although maybe some people feel like it is, but I believe that it's a lot of the culture that's created and a lot of the ancillary kind of benefits working within a company that aren't going to show up on a jobs listing, right? what are the things that drive your culture at Woodard, and how could that translate to a accountant's practice?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a big question. We only have a few minutes left. So you know what I'm going to do for your listeners? I'm going to answer it in brief, and then I'm going to give your listeners a free resource they can't get anywhere else. They're going to have to get it from you on whatever notes you provide associated with this podcast. But I'm going to give you a link to give to them, a pervasive link to a 60-minute online education course that I presented called The Staffing Crisis. And they can get there for as long as you have that link on your website connected to this podcast episode. So that's coming at a very high level. What I will say is culture is king, and culture is it forms out of a couple of elements: vision, mission, and purpose being one of them. And the vision is what you discover at the intersection point of your three things. Everybody in my company knows our vision, mission, and purpose, which is to empower accountants to transform small business through education, coaching, resources, and professional communities. Right. So, and they buy into that. I hire into that. I cast to that vision before I bring somebody onto the team. And I gauge their response to the vision, whether it's verbal, whether it's emotional. I've had people cry. That's not a job requirement, but I've had people cry when I cast the vision. I tell the $6 million man story sitting on the carpet with the business owner parents. I've had other people verbally respond to it and get excited about the fact that they can help with that problem. And it does impact whether I hire them or not. So the second is the company's values, which if you read Patrick Lencioni's book called The Advantage, he does a great job demything, not demystifying, demything, busting the myth of values that they have to do with morality or ethics, and they don't.
No, it's operating system.
Thank you. Thank you. You get that. So of course you get that. So the values are the descriptive behaviors of how my company operates, or how I want my company to operate. Those are the core kinds. And we've defined those. We know what those are. And people, those will attract people and repel people, right? So when we first created them, it repelled some people and I lost some people, but it attracts, and it's sticky because it attracts the right people who love the values and stay for the values. So if you will develop a vision, mission, and purpose, and you'll develop values, I've got a third piece that will keep people around and make you attractive. And that's the model called servant leadership. There's a book out there called by a guy named Hunter. He can tell you all about it. But servant leadership does not mean that you're a humble person. It definitely does not mean that you turn the org chart upside down as a gesture of goodwill or virtue signaling. What it means is that you delegate outcomes and authority. You don't just delegate tasks.
Right.
When you delegate outcomes and authority, you flip the paradigm. The outcome now belongs to the other person in your company, and it's your job as the owner of the company to serve them as they work toward the outcome. That's what servant leadership is.
Right.
So my people are empowered, and my people have the authority to drive their outcomes, and the people feel served by me as the team lead, right? Under the structure of very defined company behaviors inspired by a vision, mission, and purpose. Now, if those things seemed to your listeners like they were very soft and ethereal.
No, they're not, man.
Oh my gosh, they are game changing.
I used to think that it was just kind of woo-woo, blah, blah, business pabulum. Until we started implementing it back in 2015, we created our vision and values, started training to it, started teaching it to our team. And especially with the values piece, especially with how we operate, how we communicate down to the nitty gritty. When do you send a text message? When do you not? When do you, how do you delegate? Like, you have to value workload before you delegate. And you also, have to make sure that you don't bother the person above you until you try to figure out a solution.
Exactly.
On your end,
and all of that stuff, whether it's kind of the roommate agreement level or it's the actual nature of your business, it causes people to love where they work. And if they love where they work, they'll stay. If they love where they work, or if it's a place where people love where they work, they'll come. And that's one way to address the staffing crisis.
And so, yeah, exactly. This is the answer for it, because what the Great Resignation was all about is people left crappy jobs.
And purposeless jobs.
Right, exactly. And they left jobs without an organizational culture that they could,
because it wasn't the nature of the job. Right. Where people vacated one fast food franchise Chick-fil-A had no problem hiring.
Right.
Where people were vacating theme parks and state fairs, Disney had no problem hiring.
Right.
So it's not the type of business or where your SIC code is in the business,
or even the size of the business. If
or
it's
even the
just a
size
couple
of the
people,
business.
you can still implement this. Yeah.
Right. It's does your business have this culture? That's exactly right.
It's so big. I'm going to keep talking about that. I'm glad that that's something that you've already done.
Well, we have a 10-week course on it. Just kind of talked about what we do with coaching. It's one of the courses that we coach to here.
Well, and it's a critical component of scaling, because if you want to actually like build something that's more than just trading hours for dollars, you've got to have the capacity to do more than what you can do. And the only way that you can do that is if you get the right people in the right seats, and they're happy about it. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Joe. This has been awesome. Looking forward to getting that link from you. We'll put that in the show notes. And again, Scaling New Heights in kind of like mid to late June this year, but it's every year. If you're listening to this after the fact, which a lot of people might as well, get on the Woodard list, go to woodard.com and just, join the Woodard Report, check out that reality show. I have like zero hesitation in, endorsing this and telling people to do it, because, number one, I'm getting nothing from it except just the pleasure of providing this awesome resource to my community. But number two, I know that like it's going to make me look good to tell people about this amazing resource they get to find with you, Joe. So thank you again.
If you're not so sure about me yet, but you love Nate, just come to the Woodard Report, search on his name, and you can find the stuff he's written out there. It's kind of fun.
All right.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate your time,
enjoyed being
brother.
here, Nate. Thanks for having me.
All righty. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.